A major part of growing up is about identity. Discovering who you really are, accepting yourself, and finding your place in the world are all more easily and quickly said than done. The process isn't carried out in isolation either. How we relate to others is integral. It sometimes seems endless and constantly evolves. As we revisit Jacob's story, we get a glimpse of this very struggle. Many years have now passed, many miles have been travelled, and things haven't always turned out how Jacob wished, despite God promising him, as he dodged his angry brother Esau, a safe return and a lasting legacy. Confrontation is not something Jacob really has the stomach for, but as he returns to his immediate family, he believes he cannot avoid it. He's already passed several key milestones, but perhaps this is the most critical. Does Esau still want payback for Jacob's deception? How he had tricked their aged, vulnerable father into making his younger son his principal heir. Unthinkable in their culture. At a time when there's not so much as a postal service, Jacob is voyaging into the unknown. So he sends ambassadors ahead of him, but their advance reports don't sound good. Apprehension probably doesn't cover it. Dealing with the consequences of our actions is often intimidating. This may be a much older and wiser Jacob, but perhaps he still has important things to learn about himself in advance of the long-awaited and dreaded encounter. It was still the middle of the night when I woke my family and moved them to safer ground. If 400 men were coming with Esau, the threat was real. As I waded back across the River Jabbok ford, suddenly I realised all my life I'd wanted to be him. However it looked, I didn't hate my brother. Underneath it all, I loved him fiercely, hero-worshipped him. He was everything I could never be. From the minute he was born, he was the genuine finished article. I was always just running along behind him. Pa knew it. Esau was firstborn for a reason. The kind of son he could be proud of, and after Ma and I'd pulled that stump with the blessing, well, I ran away. The olds might have told me to go, but it was cowardly. So, for 20 years, I'd been up in Haran, and never mind all the things we'd lived through with Uncle Laban and juggling more wives and kids than I could shake my stick at, Esau was never far from my mind. When God told me it was time to go home, I was terrified. The nearer we got, the more anxious I felt. However, I tried to disguise it. I had stolen Esau's rights, gained the blessing our father meant for him at the expense of our relationship, and split the family in two. Finally, it was time to face the music. What would my brother do to me? I'd not been sleeping. If revenge is a dish best served cold, well, Esau was in for a tasty treat. I rehearsed it endlessly on the journey, and I came up with 3 strategies. First was diplomacy. Send a delegation with a suitably humble, conciliatory message. He never cared for surprises. I should tell him at least we were coming. And gifts. He could never resist a windfall. I had so much. Call it compensation if you like. I rounded up my animals. I picked the better ones out for him. Edible currency is favourite. Next, prepare for battle. Divide my lot into 2, so if he really cut up rough, at least half might survive. And perhaps most importantly, I prayed. How could I not, after all God had done for me? His promises on, another dark night. Would he bring me back only to perish, and those promised descendants, would he fell them too? When I'd done everything I could think of, I set to waiting. But all of a sudden, someone else was in that place too. A A stranger came right out of the darkness, tall, athletic, sturdy. How I remembered Esau. And as I rose to meet him, he launched himself at me, knocked me clean off my feet. If that was how it was, he might have scored a fall, but there'd be no submission. So it was no holds barred then, and the night seemed to stand still as we hurled each other around, twisting and wrenching, kicking and gouging. Lord knows how long it was. But when he reckoned I'd never give in, he whacked me on the hip and I screamed out. I hadn't even seen his face. But as a sliver of dawn crept along the horizon, he asked me to let him go. Bless me first, I groaned. And he asked my name then, for the blessing, I suppose, but he said the strangest thing, that now I would have a new name, Israel, on account as I'd fought with God and men and kept going. Too right I asked his name, not that he gave it to me, only that blessing, and then it was gone. And I might have dreamed the whole thing, but I was drenched and filthy, and my hip's never been the same since, believe me. As light came up, it was time to name that place too. I realised then, as I braced myself to meet my brother Esau, I didn't need to be him. I just needed to grow up, to be the person I was meant to be. The underdog, the weakling, who'd survived 3 rounds with Big Daddy. I wasn't in the blue corner anymore. Was it a dream? Or was it real? Who can say? But Jacob will now give that new name, Israel, to a nation. Like their father before them, they are to contend with God, to cultivate their relationship, hold on to him in good times and bad, and never let go. Like old Grandpa Abe, they will be questioners and seekers and pioneers on a thinly disguised, fantastic journey. However humble, even unpromising they look, like tiny hobbits taking on the bigger, fiercer and more powerful maybe. That tenacity, that open-mindedness, that willingness to grow and to change in their encounter with God will make them worthy of his love. Who they are is not just about them, about their passing family feuds, their mistakes. It's about who they are in relation to God, the Creator, the Giver, the Healer. They will begin the process of reshaping the world. Genesis means the book of beginning, however long it takes. That commitment is assured, for these are the innumerable family of the one, the only Lord of the Ring.